Good evening. I call to order the September 11, 2017 regular meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. I ask that you please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Present.
Ms. Bolton.
Present.
Mrs. Hoffman. Here. Ms. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Manera. Mr. Nelms. President Copeland Dansby.
Present. I want to ask everyone, before we get started with our business, to please join me for a moment of silence in recognition of September 11th. Thank you very much. This evening's presentations are going to be exciting. We're going to start with thought exchange and invite Ms. Sarah Trimble Oliver to the podium.
If I could just do a very brief introduction
Please.
for this. So in terms of our work around improving the employee experience, we wanted to be able to gather information from our employees that went beyond, I like this, I don't like that, but to really get some constant feedback about how we can be just a much better organization. And so thought exchange is something that Sarah brought to us. And you know that Sarah is always extremely innovative and creative, and so very excited to see what she has.
Thank you. So last month at the back to school kickoff event, the superintendent challenged us to find ways to generate new ideas to serve our staff, students, families, and communities. So tonight I have a short presentation on an online platform that we will be adding as a strategy for a way to listen, learn, and generate new ideas. We've partnered with a company called Thought Exchange. They use an online conversation platform, which really goes much more beyond your typical online survey tool. So the Thought Exchange actually has 3 steps: share, star, and discover. So in the first step, participants will respond to open-ended questions. Now you can run a Thought Exchange with any group of participants. As Superintendent mentioned, we are starting with a group of staff. So the open-ended questions could be anything really that you want to ask. Something general like what's going well, what's not going well, or you can even use it to ask very specific questions. If, for example, there are school districts that run a thought exchange and they ask their community specific questions about the school calendar. So it can be any kind of open-ended question. The second step is STAR, where the participants get to see all the other participants' thoughts, and they get to add stars to those thoughts based on how much they like that particular thought, what resonates them, what they agree with. And then the third step is Discover, which is the analysis of which thoughts got the most stars for the most people. And those get shared with the group so that the group understands what the group agreed upon. So we have actually launched our first thought exchange aimed at hearing thoughts about the employee experience. So these are the 2 open-ended questions that are being asked in our thought exchange. What can we do to improve the employee experience? And what are some things that you appreciate or think are working well? The initial launch was to school and central office administrators, and as we speak, they are entering their open-ended free-form responses to those questions. Now, next week, we will move on to the STAR portion. Now, this you're seeing is not ours. It's a sample from another school district, but this shows you what the participants will get to see everyone else's thoughts and add their stars depending on how much they agreed with that thought. After the STAR phase is the analysis, the Discover phase. So we will get an analysis from Thought Exchange for which thoughts got the most stars for the most people. This particular one is an example from San Juan Unified in California, and they asked their participants, what do you think about moving spring break to March? Well, they got very clear feedback that the top at least 10 thoughts were that they were not favorable for moving spring break. But you can see by the participation, school districts typically see a very good participation rate. 4,800 people shared 9,700 thoughts. So in conclusion, this is our first trial with Thought Exchange. We are thinking big, but starting small, and we're very excited to introduce this new strategy for listening, learning, and generating new ideas. That concludes the presentation.
Excellent, excellent. Do board members have any questions or comments? Great work as always, and
Thank you.
we'll look forward to hearing more as you move through your process.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next presentation will be school culture, and our assistant superintendents are going to present. Superintendent, do you have an introduction?
That it's always a good idea to start off the beginning of the school year talking about how we're really working to create a school culture that exemplifies what we want to see in our district. And so we are putting some pretty aggressive measures in place this year, and so I thought it would be a good idea for us to share them at the very beginning of the school year.
Very nice. Hi.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm trying to get over a cold, but I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about positive school culture and what that looks like in terms of a tapestry of support. Like a tapestry, we know it takes many threads woven together, each a unique quality in order to enhance the whole. So as we move through, we're going to take a look at what those threads are. We know that school culture is a set of norms and values and rituals and ceremonies that make up the persona of the school. We all know when we walk into a building, as soon as we go through that door, what the culture is of that school environment. It's what we see, it's what we hear, and ultimately what we feel when we're in that environment. And so one of the many threads of our tapestry is our partnerships. And for many, many years, we've had an incredible partnership with Mindpeace, as you all so well know. They have co-located mental health partnerships in each and every one of our CPS schools, and we are incredibly grateful for their support. We've also onboarded some other partners who've really created some innovative programs for us, for students with identified mental health needs. So our programs that are located with Camelot for day treatment programs, formerly known as partial hospitalization programs. And also our newest program this year at Leap Academy, our therapeutic preschool, which opened with some little ones. I saw them last week myself, who are benefiting from the support of a therapist and a teacher working side by side. And that classroom is serving both students with identified disabilities and students who do not yet have identified disabilities. So along with that piece of thread that is support from our partners, we also know as a district we need to provide support to our school teams. So about 2.5 years ago, I stood in front of some of you with Kathy Bauer and Audrey Coast and Shelton, and we talked about the renewal of positive behavior intervention and supports, which is a state-required mandate for all of us. And since that day, we've conducted 9 staff trainings for all of the buildings in our district in a train-the-trainer model. Additionally, last year we had the opportunity to train 900 paraprofessionals around practices of positive support and culture work. And we have had the blessing of having more of our partners sitting at the table with us, folks from Hamilton County, from University of Cincinnati, and Children's Hospital as part of our planning team as an integral part of that work. We also know that as we continue to grow and go forward, that professional development continues to be key. And so this year, we're really focusing hard on expecting respect. So using a curriculum out of Oregon that has received just incredible positive feedback, in addition to being very evidence-based, that expect respect from one another curriculum is going to be implemented this year through our PBIS trainings. In addition, we are still continuing work around trauma-informed practices and ACEs with Dr. Shapiro from Children's Hospital and from some of our new partners with Akron Children's Hospital. But we know that we must continue to provide additional support to our learners. And so for all schools, we are going to offer lessons about bullying in grades 3 through 8. And that occurs during our advisory sessions, as I mentioned. We've also learned well from our partners with Children's, and they've taught us to start small and figure out what works and then scale. So we have some schools right now who are focused on character strengths. So LEAP, Spencer, Douglas, and Sands, and a special partnership with Beach Acres and Mayerson. And Children's Hospital is working with us in partnership with Cheryl Broadnax and her work out of early childhood at Mount Airy and Roll Hill with the Good Behavior Game. We also know there's a special program at Riverview East, which is new to us this year, and already 30 students have been supported, with 10 receiving ongoing counseling in the Safe at School program, which is focusing on conflict resolution. Very, very positive feedback coming from that program thus far. So what's happening this school year? What's happening right now? Well, we've already started those advisory lessons with a strong social emotional lens in grades 3 through 6. On September 18th, Laura and members of the senior leadership team will be touring all of the professional development sites and interacting with teachers and principals to make sure that they are aware of all of the things that we've just discussed and have firsthand knowledge of things that are coming up. In addition, on September 21st at our principal leadership meeting, our superintendent will present as well, and in addition to other folks, in greater detail about those same topics. We also know on October 2nd, that will be our official launch of the notification button. As Superintendent Mitchell mentioned in her Innovate Teen address at the beginning of the year, one of the pieces is that the community, teachers, students, and families will have the opportunity to electronically notify the school district that they have concerns about their child possibly being the victim of bullying. So that will go public on October 2nd. And then in late November, the iCare app, created by Sarah Trimble Oliver and her amazing team, will also launch, focused on some of the virtues, including kindness, forgiveness, gratitude, and teamwork. And you can see 2 of the memes that can be sent to our students and our families roughly 3 times a week. They will receive inspirational messages if they onboard this app, and then that will help them remember important qualities. I'm really excited about that and can't wait to see it in action. So although I'm passionate about all of it, I think it's really important to hear from our students. So today, Effie Bell and William Johnson, 2 amazing threads in our colorful tapestry, are here along with some students who are going to tell you in greater detail about some of the work that is occurring in our high schools. We're very excited to have them here with us. Fifi, are you there? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. So we're going to talk a little bit about peer leadership, as well as Girls to Women and the other collaboratives that are working in our schools that was launched in our high schools. So peer leadership was launched in 2016 with 5 focus areas: college, career, philanthropy, Girls to Women, and more. And so those students are leading campaigns to change the culture in their buildings around their focus area. I have the same cold. I hope I didn't give it to Susie. And so each of those collaboratives have a captain and co-captain as well as 8 other members. And so last year they kicked off campaigns in their building, and we saw tremendous and amazing work happening with our students in our high schools. And so we're excited about another year as well that's occurring this year. And so the students also vetted, and we took them to UC as a partnership with UC and Marison Foundation, along with Strive Partnership, and we spent a few summer days with them vetting and creating and allowing them to create their competencies. So they identified what they felt are the 7 competencies that embody a student leader for them. So they said, we feel like a student should be inspirational, creative, determined, open-minded, and optimistic. And I'm gonna turn it over to William.
Well, along with that, the MORE program has been involved in Cincinnati Public Schools since 2011, where we started with 10 schools, 5 elementary and 5 high school. 2013, we had 13, and now we're up to 27 schools in Cincinnati Public School District. We have 12 high school, middle and high school students, and then we also have 15 elementary, 4th through 6th grade students. And basically, MORE is just the avenue for our young men in order to grow, mature, and prosper in the way that we see fit. We know a lot of negative publicity that's spread on our young men throughout our city, throughout our district, and we want MORE to be the avenue and a representation of all the good that is taking place with our young men throughout our district. So today I have a young man by the name of Chris Scott. He's gonna come and just talk to you about how MORE has impacted him. And he's so dedicated that as soon as he left football practice, he got up here in order to make this presentation. So I wanna pass the mic to Mr. Scott.
Excuse me. Like you said, I did come from practice. But MORE, when I first got here in Cincinnati, I wasn't born here, I was born in Texas. But when I first got here in Cincinnati, MORE was kind of a program that I kind of looked forward to because my 2 older brothers, they attended it MORE. And they said it was a good program to be in and it helped them. So when I got here, it really showed me how to basically keep my mind in school, in this kind of school, because once again, I'm not used to this kind of culture up here. So the MORE helped me with that, keep my mind in it, and it helped me to keep a positive mindset about everything here. So my development, my respect, my character, I can say majority of it has come from MORE. And now I'm no longer scared to be around people. So, you know, it's developed me and it's made me a better person.
Okay, so we're also going to take a moment and hear from the girls from Girls to Women. So we have 2 students with us today. So Girls to Women started last year. 102 students were served across 11 high schools for our first year. It's similar to MORE. We also have leadership curriculum, book club, servant leadership, as well as mentoring and career pathways. And so I have 2 students with me here from Woodward. I'm going to pray I don't butcher names. Tysia, darn, I knew I had it. Tysia and Lakyla. I apologize. They're going to talk to you about Girls to Women. They're a little nervous, but they'll be fine.
Hi, my name is Lakyla Pritchett. I attend Woodward Technical High School and I'm a junior.
My name is Tassia Atkins and I am a junior at Woodward Technical High School. Before I started Girls to Women, I was always good in school. I had good behavior. I'm an honor roll student, student athlete. But after starting Girls to Women, it helped me become more focused. It helped me become more determined on achieving my goals. It helped me become a better me. Girls to Women helped me gain self-confidence. It built me up and taught me how to build others up. Girls to Women changed Woodward in many ways. It created more young queens. It teaches us the importance of self-worth. Girls to Women help us prepare for life. It helps young ladies grow into wonderful women. Girls to Women help us understand the importance that what we do today depends and reflects on our future.
We are building a sisterhood. We want motivation, no drama. We are also mentoring a campaign called Beautiful Bulldogs at our school, and it's the middle school youth. We have two things we are campaigning. In our first semester, we are campaigning how we care for ourselves, and in our second semester, we are campaigning how we care for one another. I want the future generation of girls to women to have the best knowledge of knowing self-worth and responsibility. I want all of the young ladies to be advanced in knowing self-worth and have to respect one another and also themselves. I want to build more leaders and trust in our sisterhood. We are a sisterhood. We stand as one. Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow. So we're excited to gather more, and Girls to Women will be doing some collaboration between our campaigns this year. So this year, the students self-identified that they wanted to do campaigns together in their school around dating safety. So encouraging students the safe way to date, how to recognize challenges that you might face when you're dating. And so actually more came to the ladies and asked us if we would participate this year with them. And so we're excited about the campaigns that they're going to be launching all year in their buildings. Thank you so much.
Questions? Do y'all have any questions?
Yes, do board members have any questions or comments? Ms. Hoffman.
I know we had talked in Student Achievement Committee about incorporating some restorative practices into our school as well, and I'm just curious where that stands, that work.
Yeah, so we're actually starting with a pilot group of 10 schools this year who will be taking a look at restorative practices, and actually they're going to begin tomorrow. So.
Sure.
Exciting to hear. And then the other one we had mentioned in Student Achievement, and I would love for the public to know about too, is we talked about the research on mindfulness and the effects there. And I know many of our schools do mindful music moments and other mindfulness, and the staff and kids seem to really be responding positively. And so I don't know if you wanted to tell a little bit more about what that work is.
Yeah, so for those folks who aren't aware, I think we're almost at 40% of our schools right now are incorporating some type of mindfulness activity, whether it be over the announcements in the morning or incorporated with journaling activities. And so I think that that's obviously a wonderful thing for our kids to be able to experience. And schools are doing that as a site-based activity at this point.
Very nice, very nice. Ms. Bolton.
Yes, very impressive, and thankful to not only the students but the grown-ups that have kind of helped lead the way. I want to thank the superintendent for her work regarding student voice and student leadership, something that's carried forward in part as a result of my tomorrow. But also, I won't miss the chance that I know if Mr. Nelms were here this evening, he would certainly be extremely proud of the growth of Moore. I know that's one of his important achievements on this board, and particularly, I think we all take pride, especially the people sitting here right now, that Moore also helped get the Girls to Women
Yes.
effort. So in the name of our equity policy, it's a crowning achievement. So, but very impressive, and it's wonderful things can happen in a high school, and the most important thing is for kids to feel comfortable and confident and to be ready to be leaders. So I think this is just great. So good job, and I'm thrilled that you're heading all this up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so before you go, I also want to commend you on the awesome work that you and the entire staff are doing. It's opportunities like this when we get to hear from students who can tell us how their character has been developed and how innately they feel proud of themselves. And so when we look for success in kids, that's part of it too, the character development. So kudos to you guys.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Well, and thank you to you all for being those threads in our tapestry as well, because without your support, it wouldn't have been. So thank you very much.
Please give our best regards to the students. We didn't get to address them before they left. I'm sure they're rushing home to do their homework.
No kidding.
It's all good students do. Thank you. Does anyone have any kudos? Yes.
I would like to hats off to a number of folks, but This was a big weekend in a number of our schools. I know the Roberts folks had an important cultural festival this Sunday. And then also a very impressive effort was made by the folks that are leading the way regarding the Cannes School, the Clifton area neighborhood school, where I think they had nearly 300 people show up for an ice cream social, and a third of them were little people. And I know a number of board members were able to attend, but that's what we really need and want, and we're glad to be able to find a way to have the neighborhoods be united and under one school flag, so to speak, but also more particularly taking advantage of great community effort, and they certainly demonstrated it on Saturday.
Thank you. After reviewing the recommendations, there are no retirements to report this week, Ms. Bates. We're now at the item on our agenda where we hear from the public. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Ms. Wagner there at the end will be our timekeeper. When the buzzer goes off, your 3 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. When your name is called, please come to the lower podium. Our first speaker will be Kim Perry, followed by Michelle Dillingham.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kim Perry. I am a parent of a 9th grader named Hankat. He goes to Walnut. And I represent a group of parents and other community members that are working on the effort to change the high school start times to 8:30 a.m. Yeah, we're back. So I am here truly as a concerned parent. A lot of other people on the committee are medical professionals or somehow involved, experts in this area, but I'm just here as a parent. I look at this issue as kind of a national health issue, especially for adolescents. And I think it's on the order of magnitude, the same energy that we're putting into helping them make good nutrition choices and good choices about how active they are. And what's kind of ironic in this is I think that when they're tired, they make poor choices in those 2 other areas. So it all there's kind of a synergy around this. So I wanted to share a few things that we've learned. The CDC had a youth behavior or youth risk behavior survey in 2011. It showed that 69% of US high school students get less than 8 hours of sleep on school nights. 40% of those get 6 hours or less. They reran that survey in 2013 and the results are virtually identical. So it's showing that this pattern is repeating, that the kids just, they're not all of a sudden, oh, we know about it, we're gonna get them to bed earlier. There's other things going on with this. And so when they get so little sleep, it's setting them up for chronic sleep loss. And I think even as adults, we know that that's a problem. We experience it, and these kids are starting even earlier with this issue. So it's going to carry them, it's going to be with them longer. It's going to be a bigger problem sooner for them. But, and so, often the thought is, hey, just get them to bed earlier. And, but the other thing that's a factor here, and it's a very strong factor, is that adolescents get their best sleep between 11 and 8 a.m. because their sleep-wake cycle has shifted. And so that's one of the things that I experienced with my son Hank, is that he was this great sleeper, went to bed, got up, nice internal clock, 7 a.m., could get him down 9:30, and then between 12 and 13, it was like a light switch one day went off, and he just could not go to sleep until like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. It was just it's weird to see science play out that clearly, but, and, I'm not taking any credit for that because I'm not talking about my other child, just that one. So it's not me, it was him, so I know it's, biological. But anyway, so, there's several reasons for why kids don't get enough sleep. Too many screens, overcommitted to activities and that sort of thing. But what the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, other organizations recommend that high schools start class no later than 8:30 or no earlier than 8:30 a.m. And so the reason why I'm here today is that I'm just asking you guys to continue on your course, to set up that ad hoc committee, to explore ways to implement that healthy school start time, and to conduct a community forum soon. And I know this isn't easy for CPS because of the transportation and all the other things that go in making this shift, but I'm really looking forward to the school system being visible on this because you guys spend all the time with the kids. You really see it play out. I only have 2 children. I can't make a statement about all of them. And but once you do that through the committee and the community forum, I think other resources in the community will really rally and we'll be able to fix this issue. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Ms. Michelle Dillingham, followed by Robert Sturdivant.
Good evening. Michelle Dillingham. Tonight I'm here in my capacity as candidate for Cincinnati City Council, but always also as a parent of a former graduate of CPS and a member of the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition. I come before you here sort of at the last minute. I heard about the possibility of you, the board, considering entering into a partnership with an out-of-town charter operator. And I just want to express again, I've been coming here, I think 3 years, expressing on behalf of many parents, groups, community groups, and such, our continued concern that this board would even consider entering into any partnership with a charter operator. It just baffles me that we keep having to come back to this conversation, and especially given the fact that this is an election year and we have some members in the community who are trying to run for your seat, and yourselves as well, who typically agree publicly with the understanding that the charter experiment is a failed one, and that we have a great thing here at Cincinnati Public Schools. And I would say to the corporate and business communities that if you want to help our children, then bring your resources to the table and do not try to set up parallel, separate, privately run schools. And so I would appeal to you, I hope that you will not enter into this partnership. I understand that there's an issue of overcrowding, but if we can make room in East Walnut Hills for special gifted children, I do not know why we can't make room for the poor children of our city in Price Hill. I don't know how that fits into our equity policy. Also, this is city-owned land, is my understanding, so I would appeal publicly to those who are at City Council to not agree to sell this land to an out-of-town charter operator who we know does not have as high performance as our Cincinnati Public Schools. So that's my statement this evening. I hope you will do the right thing by the children of Cincinnati, and please defend public education. Don't try to help the other market grow. We have a great thing. We should continue it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Robert Sturdivant, followed by Ms. Julie Sellers.
My name is Robert Sturdivant. I represent the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition this evening. Madam President, board members, Superintendent Mitchell, I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to say I'm a proud Withrow graduate. Go Tigers. All right. Tonight, I too wish to speak on the proposed partnership with the Regeneration Schools Company. In lieu of the overwhelming support that was voiced by the good people of our fair city in the last election for public education and for your good offices, and in anticipation of their support in the next levy, I would urge you to reject any public support for charter schools in any particular form or fashion. Go Tigers.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Ms. Julie Sellers.
Good evening, Treasurer, Superintendent, and members of the board. The first thing that I have a couple of things that I would like to discuss this evening, and the first one is the resolution for supporting the rights and safety of all district students and staff. We did come to the last evening board meeting that more people are aware of than the daytime meetings. And I think that this really encompasses what the unions came and said that they requested that the district put out a public support for all of our children in CPS. But secondly, my concern is over the general counsel and the treasurer's report that says the district will enter into a partnership agreement with Regeneration Schools to bring a high-performing nonprofit school to the west side of Cincinnati. And then right underneath that is where they Accelerate Great Schools was reimbursing the district for up to $350,000 for the Spencer Center. I would like to say that I think that the AGS did a great job with partnering with the district to improve quality seats in the for our children in Cincinnati Public, and I think that this is a very worthy cause, but I do not approve of having the partnership agreement with the Regeneration Schools at this time. I think that there is absolutely it's too quick with the turnaround in the decision-making. I attended the board's Student Achievement Committee on Monday, August 28th, to hear a presentation by Brian Neal, the CEO of Accelerate Great Schools. To my dismays, I was surprised to hear the presentation by Brian and Stacy Shells that they intend to open a new startup school in Price Hill at the old Quebec Heights location. Then today I found out through this board presentation that there is going to be, that the district is going to enter and vote tonight to enter into a partnership agreement with the Regeneration Schools. And I believe that this decision was made absolutely too quickly. There has not been enough public notice on this. It was the board meeting on Wednesday is not even published. There was hardly anyone in the room except for the people from the Accelerator, and the meeting before that, which was an Accelerate Great Schools Student Achievement Committee presentation. That is not a public open meeting. That's recorded that people don't really know about. It is open and public, but it's during the day, and there is no notice about that. But I really am upset by the lack of transparency. I'm at meetings all over this district, and no one even came to us to talk about it. I'm not sure why CPS would think that the taxpayers of Cincinnati would be supportive of CPS partnering with a charter. CPS did sponsor the Carpe Diem High School, which has not shown the results that they were promised. I think that it's a shame that they're taking up space in one of our public high schools when we need that space. It bothers me that we have Carpe Diem, and those were the seats in the facility master plan that were moved there from Quebec Heights when they closed that school, and now decisions that the board made to open another school, and they think they can't afford it, but they can. We have the children, and they deserve a seat. I think that the property owners, through the passage of the levies and renewals, make it perfectly clear that they support CPS. They pay high taxes in this city to have good, strong public schools, and they want a good, strong public school system. I would like to remind everyone here that the agenda of Betsy DeVos had more pushback and less support than any other Secretary of Education in the history of that department, and actually it had more pushback than anyone who was being appointed to any departments of the U.S. government. This school does not fit the bill for Cincinnati or even most of the United States. It's a testing prep type of school. But since the Student Achievement Committee, I have contacted a few people in Illinois, and they have told me that they really don't have too much information about the Regeneration Schools, except they are always looking for teachers. That's not a good sign for a school system, especially a small school system. They have 6 schools, I think. They're always looking for teachers. They cannot recruit and retain quality teachers. They also said that they often advertise their job openings on sites like Indeed.com We didn't go visit that school. We have spent time going to other charter schools in other cities. We went to St. Louis, we went to Indianapolis, I think people went to New York. And once we got there, we thought by paper it was a wonderful school. And we got there, it wasn't even mediocre at best in comparison to our schools. I think that this decision has been rushed without enough vetting to determine that it meets the responsibilities to be defined as a public school and is good for children. Who from CPS visited the school to actually see the program? I know that we have visited several outside charters, and I haven't seen the school. But I would like to say, based on the book that Sarah Stitzling has published, that there are 5 responsibilities schools should have in order to truly be defined as public. And one is they have to have an accountable to the communities through an elected school board. Elected school board. Why are you, as an elected school board, giving over that responsibility to a private school board? And there needs to be accountability. It should not just be done through a standardized testing. But in terms of the 5 responsibilities, number 1, public schools should be open to the public, meaning all children, not only permitted, but also welcomed and equitably supported, even if their education may be more costly than average, such as students with disabilities or English language learners. That doesn't happen. And then they leave all the high costly students with CPS, and then they do the comparisons on the report card when we have 5 and 6 subgroups. Number 2, they should be responsive to the public, enabling community members to vote out school officials or change school policies through meaningful and viable avenues like elections, referendums, and open school board meetings, just like you are doing here this evening. That doesn't happen in charter schools. They should serve the public, meaning they need to meet societal needs like preparing active citizens to maintain the government and economy, or to serve in the military or on juries, while also preparing graduates to critique and revise those needs. And they should also be creators of the public, meaning that they cultivate citizens who know how to exchange ideas and respond to the ideas of others while tolerating and working across differences. And number 5, they should sustain democracy by developing skills and within our children for participating in and enacting freedom-oriented decision-making. That is not what these schools are, and we have not even gone to visit the school. How can you make a decision to sign a partnership before there was a visit made? I think that the decision this evening should be put on hold until there is more information gathered. It might be the best school. Maybe Stacy Shells is a wonderful administrator. Maybe we should be offering her a job at a school in our district if she wants to come back to Cincinnati. To me, she said 3 or 4 times, I want to move back to Cincinnati. My mother's getting older. She went through her whole leadership. They all want to move back to Ohio. That's not the reason we lose our children from our district and then have to pick up the pieces later. We don't know anything about this school, and when they do the map testing as decisions, we don't know what that really means in comparisons. I've seen all kinds of comparisons, and when you look down deep into the data, it doesn't mean anything. And you don't know what the subgroups are of the children that they're serving and how many children they retain in their program. And I just hope that this evening that decision to vote and keep it in this report and not have a separate election on this, I think it should be pulled from this treasurer's report. And instead of just voting on the whole report, publicly vote on it. So we know where everybody stands, because I don't think it's right. So thank you.
Ms. Hoffman. I'm sorry. Yes.
If I could just address the fact that the administration takes very seriously the fiscal responsibility of charter schools. We have added resources, most recently additional resources to improve the enrollment support as well as financial reconciliation of students who live within Cincinnati Public but who attend charter schools.
Good information. Thank you. Ms. Hoffman, would you please present our first resolution for board consideration?
Sure. I present a resolution supporting the rights and safety of all district students and staff, and I would appreciate it if we all go around to read it.
Yes, before we begin reading, I want to make note that this is follow-up from our conversation at the last board meeting where Ms. Sellers and several other union leaders asked us to consider these topics here. So I'm very grateful for the time that you've taken to work with that group to prepare this for us tonight, and we are prepared to all share in the reading of this resolution.
Okay. Whereas the hate speech, intimidation, and violence at the recent Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville served as a sobering reminder of the racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, Islamophobia, and anti-immigrant sentiment that still plagues our nation. And whereas this act of domestic terrorism strikes at the soul of our district's core values. And whereas this board, district leadership, and our employees' union leadership believe we must act to protect the rights and safety of all our students and families. And
whereas we believe that the diversity of students, staff, and families in our district is what makes our public schools strong, and that this reflection of the totality of our country prepares our children for the broad diversity of people they will encounter throughout their lives. And whereas our district's equity policy states that our students, staff, and stakeholders bring their personal backgrounds into our schools and the district is richer for it. Each of them has a legitimate expectation to have a barrier-free learning environment counteracting the contemporary and historical impact of bias, prejudice, and discrimination, which for generations has produced a predictability of learning outcomes based on race, class, socioeconomics, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, cognitive, physical ability, diverse language fluency, and religion. And
whereas it will take all of us, people of every background, coming together to do the personal, professional, and systemic work needed to support all of our children, families, and staff. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Cincinnati Public Schools Board of Education, district leadership, and its employees' union leadership condemn the violence and hate speech that occurred in Charlottesville, Virginia, and state unequivocally that such ideas and beliefs are the antithesis of the values of Cincinnati Public Schools. We acknowledge that the actions in Charlottesville are an extreme example of the bias and discrimination built into many of our country's systems, and that it is our job to build a school system for our community where all children and staff are safe, welcome, and can thrive.
Let it further be resolved that the Cincinnati Public Schools Board of Education directs the administration to, 1, provide the necessary resources to build inclusive and supportive environments where all students and staff members feel welcome to bring their whole self to school or work, and 2, to ensure that all CPS schools and sites are safe and secure and that our students and families understand that we value and will protect each and every one of them.
Number 3, assure all students and families, but especially those being targeted by white supremacist groups, including people of color, Jewish, LGBTQ, immigrant, Muslim, and people from other marginalized communities, that district policies will be enforced to protect them. And number 4, collaborate with our unions to provide the curriculum and professional development needed to fulfill the spirit of this resolution and the values of the district. I will second. Any discussion or comments? Yes.
I would thank everyone that proposed this from our unions and employees, and also thank Member Hoffman for working so hard on the drafting. I do have one cut that I would like to make, and it's just an old government teacher cut. And I have one area where I'd like to add something to make it more comprehensive. And I think I might be the one at fault for the thing I'm trying to cut now. I may have been the person that sort of suggested it. If you'll look at the second paragraph, the result, whereas this act of domestic terrorism strikes at the soul of our district's core values, I don't want to confuse domestic terrorism with protected speech. As heinous, as repulsive, as hideous as the demonstrations were and the things that were said, there is a distinct difference between the hate speech, and unfortunately or fortunately in our system it's protected, versus the act of domestic terrorism that took place as ancillary to, as a result, I think, of the demonstration. So it would be more comfortable for me if we separated that or cut that reference. I think it reads and is just as powerful without it. And the other piece that I'd like to have us look at is number 2, just so it's even more comprehensive. Ensure that all CPS schools, grounds and places where our students learn. Because the reason for that is that some of the issues our kids have come up with, as we've all heard in the last several years, is when our athletic teams and other folks travel beyond our own sites. And I think that we need to be, I know we feel strongly, and the administration does, about protecting them from terrible things that are said to them as they get off the bus or on the field or what have you. So I just would like that to include where our students learn, so that we have some, I won't say jurisdiction, but it shows that if we take them on a field trip, or we take them out of the country, or we take them to an athletic event, that we are going to protect them there as well. And I think that would help me with those 2 changes, an add and a cut.
Other questions or comments?
Can I comment on the second line there? I think we could maybe clarify what we mean by domestic terrorism, but I think especially on this anniversary of 9/11, when we saw terrorism from abroad, I was teaching in a classroom a couple miles from the Pentagon when that happened, and that will forever be my memory of standing in front of a bunch of 6-year-olds who are worried about their friends' families who worked at the Pentagon and worked at the airport where that plane took off. So we very clearly as a country understand when we see terrorism from abroad. When we had Nazis and white supremacists and members of the KKK literally kill someone and cause severe injury to others, that's an act of domestic terrorism. And so I think us calling that out is important. So potentially we could say, and this act of domestic terrorism, which caused the death of one individual and injuries to many others, strikes at the soul, but I would not want to cut it completely.
If I may, I'm comfortable with that if we clarify it. It wasn't necessarily the protests, which were disgusting and horrible. I don't want us to come out that we are not in favor of that horrible protected speech, but I think it's reasonable that that environment did produce an act of domestic terrorism that needs to be called out. I'm happy if we can clarify that a bit. It isn't the protest that was the domestic terrorism. Unfortunately, that's protected, or fortunately, it's protected, but it created an environment in which an act of domestic terrorism took place. I'd love that clarification and to even be able to keep it, but I want to make sure we're not combining. So
to clarify then,
yes.
where is the act of domestic terrorism that caused the death of one individual and injury to many others strikes at the soul of our district's core values?
That's close.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to interject here.
Yeah.
I think that second sentence speaks to the issue without any revision. I think that the issue at hand is much greater than an incident. And this is an incident, of course, that we all condemn, but this is a huge societal issue that plagues a great number of marginalized populations. And so for me, I am not interested in pointing out one act specifying the person who was killed and another person hurt. There are a lot of people who are still very injured in a lot of different ways.
And I would agree with that. The second change I would support, but that first one I feel very strongly about.
And so the
keeping
second
that one.
change, I definitely agree. And as Ms. Bolton was stating her case, she looked at me the whole time because she knows how I feel about the safety of our students and how personal it is for me when our students are treated differently in an unfair way when they are particularly away from our grounds and away from our safety. And so it's all encompassing schools, grounds, and the places where our students learn. Is that okay? Is that what you said?
Yeah, wherever they learn or whatever. If I could still try to just, so I can vote yes on this?
Yes, you can,
on
if
the
you like.
second one, on the second sentence. I would be happy if it were to say, and the resulting act of domestic terrorism would, for me, separate the constitutionality of protected speech versus an act of terrorism. The result, so we're saying that created an environment, and the resulting, I have to keep saying this teacher for 36 years about protected speech, it just is important for me to at least put an "and the resulting," I think that takes care of all of us.
Yeah, I appreciate the need as a teacher that you have to clarify the protected speech. I think we all agree that in that protected speech, for me as a person who has advocated for disadvantaged populations for 30-plus years, this is an act of domestic terrorism. And I think the second sentence speaks to the issue at hand. Remember, the request was that the board put together a resolution dealing with the incident. And I think if we get off into wanting to clarify what's protected speech and what's not in relation to this horrible act that has a lot of ramifications from it, this isn't the first, this isn't the last. I think separating that is not necessary. I think sentence 2 speaks to the first part of the resolution. I don't know how any other board members feel.
Eric, can I respond too? Because I think when we were writing this, the reason we didn't name this resolution just about Charlottesville was the point you're making that this, and I think it's a point you're making as well, Board Member Bolton, that this it justified so many other acts of domestic terrorism, right? I think, again, we saw in the couple of weeks that followed things like the Holocaust Memorial in Boston being smashed, synagogue doors in a number of communities being smashed. I mean, there's been so many acts afterwards, and I think that was also the point in some of the language here towards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the last whereas and the first now therefore, that we talk about this systemic work that's needed, that the Charlottesville incident was one incident that brought to light this systemic work that we need to do. And we talk at the end as well that we acknowledge, at the end of the first therefore, that we acknowledge just that Charlottesville was an extreme example of the bias and discrimination we know are built into so many of our systems and are directing ourselves as a district, that we know we're one of those systems. And so I do think that was some of the intent around that second whereas, that was, we saw that one act of domestic terrorism there that killed somebody, but I think you're right too, that it wasn't just that one act.
No, and we have to remember we dealt with hate when swastikas were written on the grounds at Withrow University High School not too long ago. And so being there with those families at the time that took place really spoke to me in a way that it's a systematic issue. It's not a one issue problem. So I'm moving forward with leaving the second whereas as is and making the changes to number 2 if everyone would be in agreement.
And how will it read?
Number 2, ensure that all CPS schools, grounds, and places where our students learn are safe and secure, and that our students and families understand that we value and will protect each and every one of them.
Can I make one more comment before I just wanted to, I know you had said it briefly beforehand, but also wanted to thank the leadership of CFT and CAS for the really beautiful statement that they read at the last Monday night meeting, and for allowing us to borrow a lot of that language for our resolution. And then thank the board and our district leadership, and then the leadership of all of our unions agreed to be a part of this. They wanted to be a part of this. And so really thanking the leadership of all of our unions for saying that this was what they wanted to believe in, and just coming together to state unequivocally that we value every one of our children, our families, and our staff members, and that we will do the work necessary to make sure our system reflects that.
Absolutely, and I think it's a great example of a collaborative opportunity to work together as a board and with all unions. So we have this resolution on the floor, but now we have a revised resolution. So I'm going to ask for a motion to move forward with the revised resolution supporting the rights and safety of all district students and staff.
So
Is
moved?
there a second?
A
Yes,
second? We need a second or move?
And a second.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Abstain.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Yes. Ms. Bates, would you please present the next resolution for board consideration?
Yes, I have a resolution appointing an official delegate to the Ohio School Boards Association 2017 Capitol Conference, and that delegate will be Eve Bolton. I move this resolution as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comments?
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. We know that takes a significant
Thank
amount
you
of
for
time.
serving.
Yeah.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Happy to represent.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Yes. Ms. Hoffman, would you please present our final resolution for board consideration?
Sure, I submit a resolution amending Board Policy 3220, teacher evaluation, and submit it as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comments? Ms. Bolton?
Couple of things. Questions. Appreciate the additional data that was given to us over the weekend and in our packet. I appreciate it. Do have a couple of questions. One question about the final document that captures school year, what is it, 15, 16, 16, 17, 16, 17, regarding accomplished demarcation. And so it's the question is the number of people that were by site, or at each site, I should say, that were determined to be accomplished for the final school year that's cited here.
So I'm going to ask Janetta Harper from HR to come down to be able to address your
Be great,
question.
thanks. And again, I appreciate everybody's work on this. My question is to understand better, and it might be my misunderstanding of the final chart as it relates to the previous three charts, and that is the number of teachers that are, maybe I'm reading the wrong column on that one, which is the 16, 17 school year. Those teachers that were, I think the key says that A means accomplished.
Yes.
And I think that's, and again, I appreciate the information. But the first 3 years that are in here, there's a number of teachers at each site. And then there's a very helpful district chart that shows how many folks were accomplished or ranked as accomplished throughout the district. But when we get to 16, 17, unless I'm reading, and I could very well because
What's
pretty
the
small.
question? Do we understand what the question is?
Yeah, I hope so. On 16, 17, the number of teachers that were determined to be accomplished, is that the same column as the other charts?
Are you looking at the overall under the final summative rating?
I'm looking at the chart that, for 16, 17, and the previous charts too, that say the number of teachers under A. that
Yes.
were determined as accomplished.
Yes.
Are those numbers significantly smaller, or am I looking at the wrong column?
I'm not clear what you're looking at, Board Member
Has it
Bolton.
highlighted?
Are you asking if it's significantly smaller from the previous years?
Previous
The
3
same
years.
No, it's
column
not.
A?
It's not significantly smaller.
Okay, then I'm looking at the wrong column.
Okay.
Because there's like ones and twos.
I see that.
See that? Instead of larger numbers that appear 3 years. And obviously, I must be looking at the wrong column. Because the previous charts have, 30, 20, 11, but this has kind of ones, twos, and the highest number is 4.
So these charts are broken down by site. You asked by site.
Right. Do you s-
I see what she's
This
referring to.
one. So this is the percentage. I just need clarification on that. It doesn't impact what I'm going to say or do, but.
What are you looking at? Right here?
Well, here's the percentage.
Well, it looks to me that under that performance
These are retired
rating,
leaves right here.
Right.
These are retired leaves.
Right, but what are
the
these?
accomplished.
And there's ones
These are
and.
these are per site.
Right, but per site, there's significantly more the first 3 years than in this last year.
in the final summative rating.
Yeah, you see, because of the first 3 years, when you compare sites, the district-wide one's very helpful.
Right. Ms.
If I might help so that we can move along and.
Thank you.
I appreciate the question that Board Member Bolton is asking. Coming out of the policy committee, it was the recommendation that we bring it forward to align with the state requirements.
Yes.
We have asked Ms. Harper to come back to the policy committee to address some of the very questions that I think you're bringing up, which is sharing more data about what we have, and this is a start to that. So I believe that that's forthcoming.
Great,
So-
and it probably will happen at Student Achievement Committee too, which actually has the jurisdiction for retention and professional development
Right.
and recruitment. But my question is, this chart is an exception to the previous 3, or a very different one. But more particularly, here's my bigger question regarding policy. And the state forcing us to choose between 1 and 3 years cycle, okay? And we have to do that, I got that, understand that. Member Hoffman was very clear about that. And I know that we didn't do everything that was initially suggested regarding how to do the skilled. So there's been some whatever back and forth. My major question, besides trying to get this clarified as to why this year seems so different, my major question is this a policy or is this a negotiated settlement? If it's a policy, we can change it in a year. If somehow writing this policy is now part of a negotiated collective bargaining agreement with these new numbers, you understand what I'm saying? With the new 3-year cycle instead of the 2, we had to get rid of the 2-year cycle. Sorry for all this inside baseball. But it's very different if it's a policy we're writing versus now have we changed the collective bargaining agreement, and which would then make this change in policy be in existence for the duration of the collective bargaining agreement. If it's going to mean that this is in the collective bargaining agreement, that's a problem for me because I would be worried that we're committing ourselves to a 3-year cycle for the duration of the collective bargaining agreement in the first year of a new superintendent's tenure, and knowing very well that, as was well pointed out by Ms. Harper at the meeting, it was obvious that things were going to probably change significantly in this year because Safe Harbor is over. So we're in a state of flux, I've got it. But if this one thing to make this a policy, it's another thing if this is now part of the collective bargaining agreement. And that's what I need clarification on. because the collective bargaining agreement includes the teacher evaluation piece very significantly, and we've led the nation on that. That's great. But that's not just a policy then it exists for 3 years.
Our administration explained this during policy, so I don't know if it's Paul or Yanetta or Dan who wants to take it, but three of them explained it to us during policy, why this came up.
So this was not included in this year's collective bargaining agreement. It was not written into the collective bargaining agreement. This was left to policy. So it is not in the current collective bargaining agreement.
And so we had this on our agenda at our board meeting just last Wednesday, and the motion got tabled in order to give you some more information, which I do believe is included in the packet that we received last Friday. So then today you started off with your question related to the numbers in the column A.
Right, which is what I asked about.
Okay,
and they supplied it, which is great.
Okay, so that's one issue. Number two, then your issue becomes about the collective bargaining agreement. And I just heard Ms. Harper say no.
No, we did not include that
So
in section 210.
Great. So the section in the collective bargaining agreement that pertains to the teacher evaluation has not changed.
As it relates to the intervals of evaluation, it has not.
Right.
The collective bargaining agreement does not include that.
And we are not necessarily committed to this being in existence, this 3-year cycle being in existence for 3 years, because it's not in the collective bargaining agreement. It's merely a statement of policy.
Absolutely.
Also, can you reiterate the issue about the state rules that mandate us to make these changes in this policy?
And that was clear. So due to the ending of our previous collective bargaining agreement, we were grandfathered in to have a every 2-year cycle. At the end of our last collective bargaining agreement, the 2-year cycle is no longer allowable. It is not written in statute. You either have evaluate fully every year or you evaluate accomplished teachers every 3 years. There's also something in the statute that we're not asking for, is that you can evaluate skilled teachers every 2 years, but we've not brought that forward to ask.
Okay. All right. Are we clear?
I'm very clear, and I'm very clear, and I'm hearing it that this is not within the collective bargaining agreement, that state law has changed and forced us to have a 3-year cycle instead of a 2-year cycle. We didn't take the final leap and get the skilled piece, but this is a policy. It is not in the collective bargaining agreement.
That is correct. I would like to add also is that accomplished teachers will continue to have a full observation and a post-conference, and that was exactly what we did prior to the implementation for OTES for all teachers. So they will still be accountable to an evaluation, and at any time during the evaluation cycle, they can be brought back into the full evaluation cycle, and they can also receive an improvement plan.
I am reassured that it is not part of the collective bargaining agreement and in existence for 3 years.
Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
On assurance, aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Yes. Superintendent Mitchell, thank you so much. Superintendent Mitchell, do you have a report?
I do not, beyond the presentations. That we thought it was important to highlight school culture and what we're doing in that area, and just really could not thank our teachers, our parapros, and our principals and central office staff enough.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the revised report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman?
I thought maybe we should clarify on page 6, B. So I think as a board, we've been talking about how this would be this would be allowing our administration to start a conversation about a partnership. With regeneration, we don't have a partnership signed, ready to go, and that's not clear in the wording in B. So I am suggesting we change that to say that the district enter into partnership agreement conversations with Regeneration Schools. Because that's what I think we had collectively agreed we wanted to see in this report. Is that correct, board members?
Well, I was going to wait until we got to the vote time to talk about exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
I want all of us to be clear, and especially clear with the public. What you see here in the treasurer's report, and I'm happy to help revise some wording, is the authority to begin conversations about a partnership.
Yes.
This is not agreeing or voting on a contract, on a partnership, on the opening of a school, of a charter takeover.
Right.
This isn't that, okay?
I think we need to be clear there on that, in that wording.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right. I agree with that, and I see Ms. Bates. So right now on the floor, we have to add the word conversations after agreement. In addition to that, and we don't need to put all this in here, but I think, just so that there is no confusion with the public, there are particular things that the board has asked you guys to do as you're working on this. And one of them is the continued community engagement and partnership involvement on the part of Regeneration, which they're doing. I understand them having vetted the location, the entire school in this particular part of the West Side for over a year, to continue to do that. I'm really straightforward when I talk about informing the community and giving the community a voice and an opportunity to talk about what's important to them for their school. And so we've said that, I've said that publicly, I'm reiterating that. Ms. Bates.
Yes, and I also want to add to the conversation that this will be voted on publicly. It has to be.
Absolutely.
So there is time for, for input, for review, engagement, as Ms. Copeland-Dansby described. And also, I would urge that not just Regeneration engage the community, but since we're entering into conversations about partnerships, we should partner with the engagement so we can hear from our community as well to see if this is, the path that, we're going to get buy-in for. So there's a lot of work to do. There's going to be transparency. This is the first step in that, but there's a long, there's a long way to go.
There's a ways to go, and then I do want to reiterate just what Ms. Bates and what everyone, Ms. Hoffman, has also said. All board members all board meetings are open, they are public, they are noticed. That includes our Monday meetings, that includes our Wednesday meetings, that includes every committee meeting, and the public is absolutely encouraged and welcome to attend and participate. And so if we need to find a better, and I'll wait till we get to assignments, but if we need to find a better way of saying that, then we should do that. I just, I'm really concerned when, folks may be confused that the board rushes things or does things that are not public. Ms. Bates.
And I want to bring to the public's attention as well, because it was in the consent agenda of the report of the superintendent, that we now have a director in our public affairs and engagement department. So
She's smiling.
Yeah. So we're very excited about that, and we will have very highly professional direction in doing what we just described we're going to be doing. So thank you, Superintendent Mitchell, for bringing that forward.
Ms. Bolton.
On the change of the, or the revision of the language so that it's clear or whatever, what's the language we usually use rather than conversation? And conversation seems a little...
Well, we actually, I think...
What do we usually do?
I think we worded this the same as we did previously, that there was not a concern there. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes we say to authorize the treasurer or the administration to develop an agreement or enter in conversations or enter into work and to develop. It's been a little bit different, but it's about the same
just
thing.
conversations just is, I think that's what it is, but I think if we could have a little bit more legalistic, because we're actually asking the treasurer and the president to enter into. Treasurer and the superintendent.
Conversations and potential.
Now, that's the treasurer and the superintendent, not the treasurer and the president. Just want to be clear.
Well, when we do, like, I guess it's contracts, when we say you and the treasurer.
Right.
So it's not a contract, it's the development.
No, they're going
Negotiation.
to enter into a conversation about developing a partnership agreement.
Okay.
That works. So can we just say that?
Developing will be good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now that we are all thoroughly confused, we had the motion on the floor to approve the report of the revised report of the treasurer. Now we have another revision to the revised report of the treasurer. So I need a motion to move that forward, please.
I'll second.
Second. Good.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I have one question. The, on the benefits piece, I appreciate the information regarding the MERP arrangements and whatever. Was the contract that we're voting on, or the movement, or the vendor that we're selecting, was that dependent upon the getting rid of MERP?
No.
So if we voted for this,
If you guys are going to engage in conversation, can you come to the podium,
Yeah.
please? Thank you.
To respond to your question, no, the MERP is completely unrelated to the contract with the proposed new healthcare vendor for insurance.
would it then be possible for us to, I appreciated this summary, but it's not a foregone conclusion then if we vote for this tonight that MERP is gone? I wish they had a different name. It's hard to be positive.
No, the MERP is dependent on an employee not selecting our health insurance, electing to forego our health insurance. That's the only employees eligible for the medical expense reimbursement plan are those who forego our insurance plan.
Right, and so, but we've proposed an 18-month phase out for those folks?
We have, and that's the recommendation of the Benefits Committee as well.
Okay, but that hasn't necessarily been decided, or it wouldn't be decided by this vote?
No, it would not be decided by that vote if.
Are you clear? Thank you. Yes.
I have a question on page 8, section 8, and this is regarding the Cincinnati Arts and Technology Center grant. And my question is, I think that's great that the grant is being awarded for these students, but we have tons of students whose families don't have cars and stay way after school for activities such as sports. Do they have to pay their own way home, or does their Metro Pass cover that? Because this is a matter of equity.
Mr. Miles, I believe, though, that we do give passes to students that extend way beyond the school day for after-school activities.
And to Mr. Miles, would that include opportunities for kids to have employment when there's that one employment training program, I believe through the Urban League? We extend their bus pass, we extend.
Check on that. If it's school related, we provide.
I know that it is, I'm just reiterating that, yes.
Bus passes for
Yep.
also related after school.
Okay, and then also for
regular
sports.
job,
No, not for a regular job, but when there's a concentrated effort to get groups of children involved such as this, as well as sports. And I know that some schools even have the late bus that comes late in the evening after the practices are over. Any other questions or discussion related to the treasurer's report? Mrs. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
President Copeland Dansby?
Yes. We had on the agenda to do an update related to Cincinnati Preschool Promise, and I understand that we are awaiting some particular information for a full written report. Is there anything else that needs to be mentioned there? Okay, are there any other inquiries or updates? Are there any assignments? Ms. Hoffman.
Yes, I would like to assign to the policy committee to work on updating some language in board policy 7560.1, creation of high-quality schools. To be clear about, we talk in that one about sponsorships, and we want to also be inclusive of language around potential partnerships. And so if the policy committee chair agrees, I'd like to take that work. Great, thank you.
You can't nod, you have to say yes or no.
Yes. For the record.
Thank you. Are there any others?
I have one for the board, and that would be that I think, if my information is correct, the Houston School Board, which is a large, large district in this country, has done something pretty remarkable, and that is that after the disaster regarding the storms and flooding, they have agreed and did instantly agree to continue to pay their hourly employees even though the schools were closed. So I think it would be reasonable to have a letter from our board to their board to thank them, congratulate them, and honor them for that decision, especially for their hourly employees. And the second one is that I would see if it's possible for general counsel to find time and perhaps even be on the agenda for the Workforce Development Committee that meets just because of that 15-hour piece and the living wage, the prevailing wage and whatever, because they're in the process, I think, of starting to talk about that. And I think it would be useful to have general counsel brief them on at least what the policy committee's heard. Those are my two assignments.
Okay, so going back to the Houston School Board letter, would you like to draft that?
Sure.
And send it to
all of you to
all of us to
check it out?
Yep, and if
Great.
we could get that done by Friday, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna put your name by that. And then I
Sounds
think
good.
the next assignment is to General Counsel to attend the Workforce Development Committee meetings. Do we have a schedule related to those meetings? Okay. If you could get the schedule to Ms. Davis, and then she can ensure that it gets to General Counsel. Thank you so much, Ms. Sellers.
I just want to remind the board as well with that assignment that legal counsel also will come back as a follow-up to policy to provide some clarification around or follow up on meetings that or discussions that he was going to have with a couple of people involved with that.
Nice.
I just want to make sure we align efforts and
I
not
agree with
splitting.
you.
Yeah.
Are there any other assignments? So I have one. I am always concerned that we as a district do rigorous community and public engagement. And I am often overwhelmingly pleased with how our FACE team and other folks are engaging with the community. I do, though, think that we might have a gap in the way that we communicate that to the public. So I think just by virtue of a website, which is pretty quick information to get to, I want to make an assignment to have the FACE team review the current website for rigor and update. I know that the treasurer, I think I know that the treasurer's office has a new website or somewhat new website, as well as maybe transportation and that. And so along those same lines, if we can begin the process by which the FACE part of the website gets some gleam and some shimmer, if you will. I think a lot is missing. I think not only are folks participating on the ground in the community, but we have a whole customer service office. We have community learning centers where resource coordinators are responsible for imparting information to the public in ways that many of us probably don't even know. And so if we can say those things, and I don't know what a timeline looks like, but I just wanted to assign to get started related to that. Okay. Are there any other assignments? Having no other business coming for the board, we're adjourned. Thank you.
It was good. Oh.
Susan Bunty.
Hey, Susan.